Shabbat Shalom. Mazal Tov. So wonderful to be here with everyone at a time of joy as we bring in the first month of Adar. When my son Idan was 2 years old, one of his favorite activities was hugging. Hugging, that's right, hugging. He loved to hug people he knew, his mother, his father, his grandparents, and he also loved to hug people he didn't know, especially other children. So he would go up to children at the park or the playground or at his music class, I think one time even in a supermarket, with his arms extended and a big smile on his face, just reaching out and embracing these other children in a hug. As a 2-year-old, he was completely unaware, of course, of the social norms that tell us not to hug strangers, or yes, to ask permission before you touch somebody else. But he was just acting from this place of deep, deep, unbridled emotion. Just whether it was love or joy or excitement at seeing a new face, whatever it was, he was just compelled to express his inner emotional state by physically reaching out to connect. And I loved watching him do this. I loved when this happened. It was so moving. It was so beautiful because really how often do we see this kind of pure, unapologetic expression of emotion? How often do we feel that or allow ourselves to feel that deep and pure and unapologetic expression of emotion? So this is not uncommon behavior in young children. It's only as we get older that we begin to take in and internalize all of the messages, the admonitions and the warnings that lead us to hamper our raw emotions, to pen them in, to constrict ourselves and restrict ourselves. We might hear that someone is a little too friendly, or we're told not to cry. I see enough people here who remember Free to Be You and Me, and that song, It's All Right to Cry. We had to write a song to tell people it was all right to cry, because mostly we're told that don't cry, keep a stiff upper lip, or don't be angry. I love this one, especially in the context of describing women who are angry women. Don't be angry, don't let your anger show. Another way of saying all of this is that as we get older, we begin to allow our thinking, our minds, to overpower our emotional impulses, our hearts. And it's not appropriate for all of our behavior to be guided exclusively by our emotions. Make no mistake about that. All sorts of negative consequences can happen when we allow ourselves to be driven only by our hearts and without any mitigation from our minds, whether that's foolish things people do for love or deeply hurtful things we might say out of anger, or devastating choices that people and nations make out of envy or rage or a desire for vengeance. When we don't allow the mind, when we don't allow our rationality to intercede, we can cause tremendous pain to ourselves and to others. But I think one could reasonably argue that our world has reached a point, or part of our world, the world that many of us live in, has reached a point where the balance of mind and heart is a bit off kilter, where in many aspects of our world, and I'll say particularly in Jewish communities, we privilege the intelligence of the mind over emotional intelligence. And this idea of the imbalance in the heart and mind and the possibility for restoring it, at least in part, is an idea that was explored 100 years ago by Rav Kook, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, in one of his essays about Rosh Chodesh. So we're marking Rosh Chodesh today. He's writing about the Midrash, you might know it, it's somewhat well known, about the moon complaining to God. The moon complaining to God about the sun, just after they have both been created. This is from the Talmud, Tractate Chulin, and it reads, Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi raises a contradiction between two verses. It is written, Vaya'as Elohim et shnei ha'me'orot hagedolim. God made two great lights, me'orot gedolim, two great lights. And in the same verse, the verse continues by saying the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. So how can this be? How do you have two great lights and then one's lesser and one's greater? So Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi explains, when God first created the sun and the moon, they were equally bright. They were equally bright. And then the moon came and said to God and complained, is it possible for two kings to wear one crown? And we think maybe the moon was kind of saying, hey, I'd like to wear the crown. Let's get the sun out of here. And so in response, God says, okay, go and diminish yourself, moon. Amar la lechi ume'ati et atzmech. Go diminish yourself. Rav Kook teaches that this contention between the sun and the moon can be understood on a personal level, birazei hanefesh, in the secrets of the soul. He says that each one of us, inside of each one of us, there's a sun and a moon. The sun is our seichel, it's our intelligence, our capacity for intellect, and the moon is regesh, emotions. Like in the Midrash, we are born with these two equal, our heart and our mind. And Rav Kook says that we are meant to have both of these lights shining equally. But often there are conflicts between the sun and the moon, between the heart and the mind. You may have experienced this yourself. And just like in the Midrash, the moon is told to go and diminish herself. And so the moon's light, the light of our hearts, of our emotions, is dimmed in each of us. He writes that the light of intellect is held up in our world, in our society, as more important, as I said before. And I think this is true, again, particularly in the Jewish community. We want to know, where did you go to school? How many degrees do you have? If you go to hear a lecture, you'll read the person's bio and it says that she graduated from Harvard, or they've published 6 books, or he's an expert in kangaroos, or whatever it is. The bios don't generally say things like, he loves his mother very much. Or she finds great joy in woodworking or hiking. We leave that part of ourselves out of our public presentation to others and to the world. And we believe that the true way to knowledge, to understanding, is through the intellect. We have a great intellectual history in Judaism. The Torah, Gemara, learning, fighting, arguing, debate. This is all in the mind. In our country, we have universities. We talk about the ivory tower as the place to be, the place to learn, the place to access knowledge. Our seichel, our sun, is greatly elevated, and our moon, our regesh, our emotions, are so often diminished. Rav Kook says that knowing, however, true knowing, true understanding, is much more complex and nuanced than we can access exclusively through the mind. And the world is suffering, he says, because we don't value enough the fullness of our hearts, of our emotions. of our ability to understand the world and to understand God through that path. So we are spiritually stifled. He says that if we could bring the moon and the sun, the heart and the mind, the intellect and the emotion back into an equilibrium, ma tov u'ma na'im, how good and how pleasant, yeh az ha'olam. Then the world would be so good, so pleasant. Ma nechmadim alizim kevirim ukedoshim ha'chaim. Our lives would be holier. They would be gentler. They would be more full and complete. He writes that Rosh Chodesh, this day that we mark every month of the Jewish calendar, can be a sort of tikkun, a repair of this lunar diminishment. Because on Rosh Chodesh, we are paying attention to the moon. We are celebrating the new moon. The month begins with the new moon, so we're giving our attention to that aspect of astronomy and that aspect of ourselves, praying, in a sense, for the light of the moon to be restored, brought back to that equal light of the sun. And this happens every month. So Rosh Chodesh every month is an opportunity, he says, to focus on embracing that emotional aspect of ourselves. Rabbi Moshe Weinberger of the Eish Kodesh Synagogue in Long Island teaches that this idea of Rav Kook's is amplified in the month that we're bringing in right now, Adar Aleph, the first Adar of the leap year. That extra Adar. Why? Because there is a partial restoration of the balance between the light and the sun and the light of the moon, because we are adjusting the calendar. That's what the Jewish leap year is. It is an extra month to bring the lunar calendar into realignment with the solar calendar so that we can celebrate our holidays according to the lunar calendar that's prescribed by the Torah, but they don't travel around the calendar and then get celebrated in different seasons, which is what would happen if we only followed the lunar calendar. So we need the solar calendar and the lunar calendar, and we have to bring them back into alignment, and that's what Rosh Chodesh Adar Aleph does for us. So that's happening on a calendrical level, and that opens up the space for spiritual realignment of the heart and the mind. And Rabbi Weinberger suggests that there is one day in particular in this month of Adar Aleph on which this idea of Rav Kook's is even more amplified, and the possibility for accessing our emotional lives is even greater, and that is the holiday, the minor holiday of Purim Katan. What is Purim Katan? It literally means little Purim. We're going to celebrate the big Purim next Adar with lots of partying and festivities and mitzvot and reading the Megillah and all of that. But this is Purim Katan on the 14th day of Adar Aleph. And in rabbinic language, the word katan means not only little, but also child. So Purim Katan, Rabbi Weinberger says, is the Purim of a child, of that pure, unadulterated, beautiful, innate emotion of a child. He writes, it's the reverberations of the laughter of a child, all the laughter that we want to be able to bring forth in ourselves, all the pure emotions that we want to bring forth in ourselves, but we are so afraid. We are so afraid of where these emotions might lead us. And we are afraid to be vulnerable. And we are afraid to feel. That part of the mind takes over, and our emotions are embarrassed. And the light of our moon is diminished. On Purim Katan, we can access the spiritual energy of that day to overcome this very sad picture that he paints for us, and that I think resonates with me and perhaps resonates with you, about how much we allow ourselves to feel and to give of our emotions. Purim Katan is that one day in this 1 month, but this 1 month, Adar Aleph, really, we can do this at any time. So we get to practice this month, and we get to practice particularly in 2 weeks on Purim Katan, to expand our hearts, to open our hearts, to pay attention to this aspect of ourselves. This is the blessing of this Rosh Chodesh, that we create the ways for ourselves, whether it's more music, more prayer, more meditation, or just hugging people in the supermarket. However you want to do it, create those ways to access the wisdom of our hearts, to express the emotions in our hearts, to realign ourselves. And let that be the way for our hearts, our moons, to shine brighter. Shabbat Shalom, Chodesh Tov.